I ran out of storage. So just a little bunch of things, and I hope this lasts me at least another, I don't know how long. I'm just here, as I said before, to just kind of like vent in a very as chaotic a way as I need to. But yeah, I was talking about, the 2010 World Cup, and I was talking about how that was the first one that I actually remembered because I was talking about the IP class that we would discuss the things that happened in the games, and I remember like one of the players that I guess we all really liked because he was Christian. He cussed, and then that was like a big thing. We're like, oh my god, not him! Oh no! I feel like looking back, the whole idea behind him and why people like him, it was there are some racist undertones, not maybe not racist, some classist undertones, but yeah, I feel like yeah, we're way past that. I don't care. It's not that I don't care about like that type of thing keeping happening again, but like me here publishing myself, like that does not apply here, I guess. That's not what I wanted to say. But I was talking about the game that my mom's watching and how it made me realize that it's what happening every year, and then you have the Olympic Games and the World Cup. They happen every 4 years, and they always happen. They keep on happening, and it can give you like a sense of stability. Like things will go on, but usually it is not the way that it makes me feel. It makes me feel more like I'm like the things are in number one, it gets me to just assess where I am at as opposed to where I was at in the last game. And also like the older I get, like the more of this happens. I remember 2014 I was kind of like reflecting on 2010, and mostly I was thinking about how that year is going to be better, and I mean it was in some ways and it wasn't in others. Specifically talking about the event, not talking about myself. But like since then we had 2018, 2022, and we had 2026. Oh my god, this next year. But the point is that like you have all the Olympic Games, and I don't know, like it doesn't bother me the idea that like they're gonna keep happening like way after I die. They're probably gonna keep on happening. That doesn't bother me. I think I've accepted my mortality. I may have accepted it too well. I mean, I do remember when I was younger, the idea of like dying just felt very much like no, like there's so much I want to do, so much I want to accomplish. I don't think I'm gonna have time to do all of that, in the lifetime that usually we have. Let's say like 80 something years. And right now, I just looking at it, I'm like, I cannot really imagine myself being 80 or 50, as I said, or 30. Like that is just so. It's not like that it is far away. It's just that right now I'm like, do I even want that? Because I'm not saying that life is meaningless. It isn't. Like it has the meaning that you give to it. Maybe I'm not willing to give it any meaning. I'm just, as I said, like I'm being very indulgent with myself this past few months, and a part of it, it's kind of like my head's way of saying goodbye. Like sometimes I can help myself. For example, I went out with my mom this morning, and it's around noon for lunch, and I went with her for the first time because we've been there as a family, just my parents, my brother, and I've been there with my brothers, I've been there with my dad multiple times, I've been there with like my younger brother, and it's like kind of like my happy place. I don't want to say it because it's going to be kind of embarrassing to say like, oh, this restaurant franchise is your happy place. I would call it like the love of my life before. It was in the context of people like relationships are not for me. I'm good. As I said, like if I ever change my mind, I've changed it, but like nothing really has happened this past decade to make me change my mind. Nothing like where I was at when I was 18 is pretty much where I am at today, if more certain, because I feel like I grew up in a Christian environment, so there are a lot of things that people associate with marriage, and it's not just sex, but like people associate like you want this, this fellowship, this whatever, you should get married. And basically the more I live, the more I realize like I can get all the things that I could want out of that from anything else. I don't have to have this. I mean, I already knew this when I was younger. Like this, I've never been a person who had thought that was something that's going to happen, but I remember myself as young as like 14, just being very much like, yeah, that this whole relationship thing is not for me. When I was 14, I was very judgmental of people, like, do you want that? Why would you want that? You have so much more freedom if you don't have that, at this point I'm like, you know what, you do you, whatever you think is going to fulfill you, like you go for that, and I support you, as long as you don't hurt me, anybody else, like the usual gist of things. But and so like I still like I put myself, in somebody else's shoes, because I think when I was younger I didn't want to cogitate the idea, and then right now I have actually been like, yeah, what was it, like, you know what, I see what people value. I'm not gonna lie, I was talking about how I watched House of Cards the other day, and honestly, like, that was the first time that I was, not the first time, but like that was the time that I was like, oh my god, like, I get what people want in marriage, because the way that their relationship works is not only fascinating, but like borderline makes me want to have a little, partner in crime. In that case, very literally. But yeah, even the way that the relationship ends, like, I enjoyed the ride, and I also like realized like you want that for you. Like, I get it, okay? Like, that sounds fun, like that's what marriage was going to be like. I might even consider it, but like usually it's not. I don't know, maybe I just crave excitement, and also like the freedom, because that's the thing, like, about social interactions, and everything else, like these are constructions. So like there is a mold that some people are going to try to sell you as like this is the only way, but like no, you can do it in whatever way you see fit, like whatever way works for you, like, just that finds somebody that like it matches your idea. And that is pretty much the same thing that happened with me regarding friends. I was very adamant that I did not want or need friends for the longest time. And I don't know if I say I need friends. I don't think I got to that point, but I definitely, I want, like maybe not friends in general, but like some of the friends I have, and some, individuals. There are some individuals out there that I'm like, I think we could vibe. I think we could have a good time if we're interacted. No one like in my general vicinity is usually just like fictional characters or people I see from afar. But they just serve the idea that I'm like, yeah, I get why people want this. I know that we're like in a loneliness epidemic. I personally don't think I am part of like that epidemic. I have people around me, and I interact with people. Like, I think that when I was like 18, you could probably say that, even though it was like mostly a choice that I made of like interacting with people. I think I could say that I was kind of lonely, and I didn't want to be lonely, but I wanted to be left alone. And then they kind of like brought the whole thing. Also, like, I didn't really know who I was, and I had a lot of like dreams and fantasies, and like about what I wanted for myself, and also like I was starting to learn the way that things work. And it's not like because that's the thing about like becoming an adult. It's not like things they're magically different from what I knew, what I imagined. It's just that I don't know, I feel like I think that things are more possible and more doable when you're young. And what I end up learning is that there are more obstacles than you realized, and that like it requires sometimes resources that you don't have, and you don't have the means of getting. You can get some resources, but like not all of them. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've always dreamed too high, probably. I think that people in my life wouldn't necessarily say that. It's kind of like crazy, like the mismatch between like your version of yourself and the vision people have of you, because that is something that I'm constantly going through, or like my parents, my family, my friends, like I feel like they see me as this person who like does so many things, can do so many things, and I don't really feel like that, because the things that I do and I can't do, they don't really feel like I don't know how to say it. Like, I have lots of interests, and I kind of like I do them, maybe because there's not necessarily inherently like monetary value to them. Maybe that's the reason. But like I do a lot, like painting and like doing a lot of things. But there's not. I guess that's not what I'm looking for. Not that I know I'm looking for. I'm talking about my writing, and honestly, that is one of those things that I really. Like I said, it could definitely, it feels fulfilling every time I write, not only the completed novel, but like not only a completed novel, but the process, the journey. As I said, maybe that's what I'm gonna do this afternoon until it's time for me to go to bed, because we have stuff to do tomorrow, and they're gonna get here to just make a mess in my room, and I kind of like have to get ready before that. So, but yeah, so I don't know, man. I don't fucking know. I'm just so yeah, like I don't think they're wrong in their assessment, but I feel like the weight that they put on some things is not the same weight that I put on them, but I don't know. But also it has to do, I guess, with my own expectations of myself, and the expectations, they're very much tied up to my fantasies. So I feel like I put in my head that like I've done these things, that I have accomplished these things, or that I will accomplish these things, and then anything that's not that feels very meaningless or not like good enough, which makes sense because, as I said, I tend to just go way too high, you know, way out there. Like yeah, like I just, you know, in a crazy way that I don't even talk about it as much because I know people are going to say like, okay, that is not even, maybe that's not even possible. It's not impossible, but it's just like one of those things that's just so unlikely that it's going to happen, not only to me, but like to anyone, you know. And like I'm not, you know, delusional unless I'm manic to think like I'm going to be that person that's going to do that thing. When I was younger, I was like, I'm gonna crack that one, I'm gonna be the first one, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, there's so many things I wanted to do. And as I said, they're not really, they were goals, but you know, like I think I have to have been, but honestly, here's the reality. I would have to have been born to a different financial situation than I was born to. And I'm not ungrateful to my situation, I'm happy where I am at, but for me to have achieved the things, I needed, you know, a certain head start in certain areas. And I didn't have that. So I'm not bitter about it, I'm just, you know, acknowledging that fact. And that, as I said, like that's not even like, those goals are not even goals that I have right now. Not there's anything wrong with them, but I have moved on to other things that I think I find more fitting. Because also I kind of like realize that, you know, sometimes accomplishments for their own sake, they are not, you know, really the key just to like your mental success. They're just, you know, things that you can put on top of, you know, like the mess that is underneath, and that's not really what I wanted. You know, like to this day I'm still figuring myself out, you know. So like yeah, and I like the pace I'm doing things at. As I said, I welcome more responsibility, but like not any type of responsibility. As I said, I would not ever want to have children because, you know, number one, I don't really find the need, but or, you know, like the desire. I rather use my money for other things. But usually, like children, like they are a lifelong commitment, you know, a financial commitment, and it's also like a physical commitment. So like there is all these elements surrounding it that I really don't. Yeah, I don't think that's ever going to be the case. Also, like there's a whole fact of like I'm not really sad on continue to exist. So like, let's say I would hypothetically bring a child to this world, like I would not really be the one to like to have to do any of that responsibility. So like that's not fair to anybody else, right? I wouldn't, you know, push this onto anyone. Wait, I don't know why I went. Oh yeah, I know. I was interacting with you know, like the daughter of the woman who got my eyebrows done the other day, and we were vibing, and she was very similar to me when I was a kid, you know. She was, as said, she was straightforward, she was very cute, she was adorable. She asked me to help her, you know, like with just like little things, and it was kind of like, but not in like I want to have a child way, but more in like, oh, I wouldn't mind being an aunt type of way. You know, like I don't think that's happening because I don't want children. I don't think my older brother says he wants children, but like I'm just being realistic. I don't know if he's ever going to have them, and my younger brother also does not want to have children. So I don't know, maybe the children of my cousins, like I could that. I mean, I'm getting close to one of my cousins, but honestly, like, and she also doesn't want to have children, but you know, her girlfriend does. So maybe like that, you know, that might lead to something. But the point is, ultimately, I cannot handle children for more than 10 minutes at a time. That's why I learned from like that girl. She was really fun when we were having things, but it was only like in small doses. Like, you know, we got play, and then, you know, her mother sent her away, and then she did the thing, and then she came back and played a little bit, and mother sent her away, and then by the time we left, I was, you know, both going, we were in the same direction. She wanted me to go with them, and they were going to the local grocery shop, and I was just like, I'm so glad we're going different directions. I can't stand this girl anymore. Nothing wrong with her, it's just that it's not, some people are just not meant for it, right? Yeah, also like the reason I've been thinking about children is because the other day I was talking to someone, not a person I know, you know, because you go to, you know, in public transportation, and then you strike a conversation with someone that you've never met before and you've never seen before, and for some reason we were talking about legacy. No, I do know how the conversation got there. And I was very kind of like nonchalant about my whole existence thing, because when I was younger, I really wanted to leave a legacy. At this point, I don't give a fuck. I only care about what's happening in my life right now, which is kind of crazy because I did oscillate between these two moods when I was a teenager, you know, between I want to do everything like right now, you know, because I'm going to be enjoying this, and once I'm done, whatever. But at the same time, like I want something, I guess I want to be, I know, remembered, or not like remembered, but like I want to be held, admired, respected. I don't know what it should be. I wanted like my accomplishments to be so significant that, you know, like I would be, there'll be something, quite something. I had a to properly put it. And then, you know, the older I got, and this is something because before I got to the point where I'm like, I do not give a fuck about what happens about me once I'm dead. It only matters when I'm alive. I got into like an extreme of like, well, getting like very paranoid of like, oh my god, if I don't do anything, if I die today, if I kill myself, whatever it is, I'm going to, there's nothing, you know, like there anybody's going to remember me. I mean, naturally, like my family, my friends, like, you know, like they would, like, I don't, it wasn't them that I want to remember me, that I wanted to remember me. It was more, you know, his brother, you know, like involving like more people, something bigger than me, I guess. And it's interesting because this was something that got me almost paranoid, and I didn't really think about it like for a while. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, at some point I stopped caring about that, and I'm so much better for it because that just led to so much anxiety. And you might think that maybe thinking like that all the time will get you to maybe try to do more, accomplish more, but it kind of doesn't, because the anxiety kind of like ended up getting in the way. I think like I've been able to just do more by not really thinking about it and just, you know, thinking about right now and, you know, what I can, you know, get from life today and until the day I die. And I think it goes together with the whole thing I was saying about maybe this whole thing that's happening, these indulgences, they're kind of like a goodbye. Oh yeah, I was talking about me having lunch with my mother, and basically, you know, that is whenever I go to this restaurant, even whether it's by myself or somebody else, it's always okay, it's always like, it always becomes like apparent that it kind of is a treat. You know, it's a treat for me. Like it is basically the goal that I go to a nice place once a month, sometimes twice a month. For example, next month I'm gonna go more than once because they had this, you know, limited edition, you know, special dishes, and I want to try both of them. But basically, you know, what I'm trying to say is that, you know, whenever I think about a special treat for myself, it always comes to the, you know, comes to the package. It's just me thinking like, okay, is this because I'm not gonna be here for too long? Is this like kind of like a goodbye? And this has been kind of like the case for the past, like since my birthday, since around, this is before my birthday, so November to now, and you know, it's going to be November again soon, so it's going to be a whole year of like me doing this. And not gonna lie, if the year keeps up, it's probably going to be one of the most enjoyable years I've ever had. And it is because I'm indulging myself, and not only because sometimes, like, you know, for you to indulge yourself, you have, it's kind of expensive, so like you have to find like the right thing, you know, that, you know, it costs, because anything's going to cost money, but that you can have like the most of it without you spending like the least amount of that. And it, you know, for me it's food. Naturally, like there's like very expensive food, you know, you go into this restaurant, it's kind of like on the more expensive end. Expensive for me, like you have plenty of money, you might not find it expensive. It's just that, you know, minimum wage here, so it's just limitations. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm always, you know, thinking, and maybe it is kind of like a goodbye, but I'm not actually thinking about doing anything. Oh, I was talking about the guy at the bus, and basically we're, you know, talking about legacy, and basically I got to the point where I was kind of like, I don't care. I was definitely like more, not like, but I was definitely, you know, talking about it with like more words. But I was basically talking about how, you know, I enjoy, you know, for me it was more important what I enjoy like in life and whatever. And then I said like, you can, you know, can kind of like have both. And then his example were children, you know, because you enjoy them as they're here, but like when you're gone, they continue to exist and they're kind of like a part of you. And then you're gonna have more children, so like you're going to continue to exist forever. Also, the whole bloodline thing used to be something that I don't care about it. Like 99% of the time, I don't really care about, you know, the fact that I'm not like my bloodline dies with me. It's even cool to say that. But there's like a smidge of me that wants, like, you know, but that usually that smidge of me is like, my genes are so great that I have to share them, and that is not a great way. Like no sentence that led to anything good has ever started like that. You know, so but I'm good. But it does get you thinking about how you changed, about, you know, how time changes you, and also about how, you know, like sometimes there are things that feel very insurmountable, but you're going to, like, you're gonna figure it out, basically. Like even if you're not actively trying to do it, like you got it, basically. Maybe you don't, got it. And that's okay too. But like, you're gonna keep existing, and that is the beauty of life, you know, like you're all stumbling. And it's not like the whole thing of like me thinking that I'm the only one going through this, because sometimes, you know, people try to help you, and the way that they do that is by saying like, oh, we all go through that. And I understand like what you're trying to do, but it does feel like sometimes like you're minimizing the issues, because like, yes, I know everybody goes through this, you know, level of questioning. And also like there are some things that are like inherently mine because of mental illness, but then there's like a lot of mentally ill people who have the same mental illness than me. So like we all kind of like going through that, you know, too, and we're all surviving. And I'm not gonna lie, there have been times when I have really, you know, being very much like, why am I like this? Because, you know, maybe my life was going to be it would be objectively better in some ways if I didn't have to struggle with my head so much. When I think about like my struggles, like there's been a lot of external things, and usually the internal things make external things like be even worse, but then, you know, they're external and they're internal things, and it's always bad. And, you know, like just to get to the end of like that particular struggle, I realized that basically like a lot of the things that I like about myself, they come from my experiences. And, you know, I think like ADHD is easier for me to be endeared to than, I guess, like being bipolar, but like it is pretty much me, and I have had really bad times with it, but, you know, it wouldn't be me without like those elements. But back to like me being very, because as I talked about before, I'm not really religious. I don't believe in anything, basically, and that includes, you know, people, institutions, systems, ideologies. I don't believe in anything, or deities, and nothing wrong if you do. It's just that personally, it's kind of like interesting how, anyway, I feel like the particular branch of religion I was brought into kind of like set me up to not be a religious person, by which I mean that basically I was taught, because a lot of like Christian, you know, environments are very much like, that is demonic, that is satanic, that is, you know, sinful, that is like, that is not so much where I was brought up in. Like there were talks about, you know, sins and like things being wrong and all that, but a lot of it was just, you know, it was put kind of like, you know, we look at it as if like, oh, look at this silly little thing that isn't really based on, you know, reality, or, you know, not, yeah, that's not on reality, or, but like reality implying the existence of like that particular version of God, and that particular version of Jesus. And it was basically, so for example, like I never believed in supernatural, like not even like ghosts or entities or whatever, you know, so like, I don't know, astrology, tarot, tradition, you know, like popular, you know, like allegories and all of that. They were always like presented as like, okay, these are the things people believe. Even like, you know, for example, Santa Claus or something like that. Like I've always known that that was like a construction, you know, and that's always been the case. So like I was kind of like taught basically to just be like, you know, this is not really based on anything. And of course, like in the context, you know, the Bible was kind of like the source, so it wasn't based on that and whatever came from that. But, you know, at a certain point, like basically I was like, I don't believe in these things, and it got to the point where I was like, why do I believe in this? Like there's no basis for this as well. So that's pretty much what I mean. They kind of like, my parents kind of like set me up to, because, you know, like the church did that, but more specifically my parents, they did that. They were not demeaning in any way about, you know, things. I mean, some things they were kind of like, I couldn't, you know, kind of like have access to them. But it's kind of funny because like I remember them vividly, my parents don't. The other day we were talking about something, Selena Gomez came into the conversation for some reason, and I told her I was using recently research of Waverly Place, and I kind of like mentioned that, you know, I wasn't allowed to watch it, and then my mom was like, why not? You know, like, and I was like, did we? And I told her they didn't let me, and they were like, oh, did we like turn it off when you play? And I was like, no, you told me not to watch it, and then I didn't watch it. I was a really good kid. I had a lot of, I don't know, like sometimes because of like my appearance, I think people think I'm kind of rebellious, and like I was very, I guess, rebellious against, for example, religion in general, but the religion specifically in which I was brought up with, the political landscape of like, you know, this constant surrounding me. Like I was rebellious against like those, but like never with my parents. Like we always had a pretty chill relationship, also because they are also very, very chill, you know, like I think it's the way that they presented themselves as well, because, you know, a lot of like the things that I was taught not to do, they came from, you know, the church, you know, the church in general, but also from like our church, the local church that we went to, you know, every Sunday, and it's also the thing about your parents are imperfect, but, you know, it's kind of like sometimes good enough to see them grow, because sometimes like if they made a mistake with you, and then you see like your younger sibling and they don't make the same mistake, you can be kind of resentful of like, I had to go through that and you don't. Well, right now I'm at a point where I'm like, you know what, I'm really glad that we are where we are at. And maybe like the particular example I have in mind is like going to church, because I was basically forced to go to church every Sunday, or Saturday, sure, if like until like I was basically an adult. My brother, on the other hand, he's 17 and he hasn't gone to church like in a while, and my parents are not really pressing them. Like we have like little not it's not sermons at home, like we pray and all that, so we have like religious rituals, but he doesn't have to be forced to go to church. And that it's something that for a while I was very resentful of, because for example the first anxiety or panic or whatever attack that I remember having, it was when I was at church, because I didn't want to go for a variety of reasons. I didn't feel uncomfortable. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like welcomed. I felt like I was being very, very exposed because of like some standard things that happen in church, and I really didn't want to go, but my mom was like, no, you have to go. And then she dropped me at church, and then I went to the bathroom and I had a panic attack, and that was really something that's slightly traumatic to me. Also, like it kind of like made me perceive my parents regarding religion, because as I said, my parents are pretty chill, and then there's like a little asterisk that involves, except when involving religious things. But as I said, so like the part of me was like, so he didn't have to go through that, but I did. But like he didn't have to go through that because I went through that, basically. I think like I was able to talk to them about how it was bad for me, and then I realized we're not going to do the same thing. Also, like COVID might have played a part, because like instead of like going to church physically, they were watching the the church online, which they still do. Like my mom, she doesn't always go to church Sunday, but she watches the like the preachings every Sunday. She opens there in her laptop, and so like that would be also the case. But there's also like some good things. For example, like I have ADHD, and so does my brother, and I only learned when I was 19. And then basically when it came to my parents deciding like whether my brother will have he's 10 years younger than me, is going to take Ritalin or not, they asked me like, would things have been better for you if you had Ritalin? And I was like, yep, because definitely it would have been better. As I said before, like I was always like top of my class, but sometimes like by top I mean I was like 90%, like if I sometimes 90-95%, but like that would have been a difference of like 95 to 100 or 90 to 95. So I'm okay with my academic performance, to be honest. For many years I was very like, this is horrible. I did fucking terribly, the whole sloth thing that I was saying, but yeah, so basically sometimes parents, they do something with a child and then they do better when with the next one, and it can feel kind of, as I said, I'm finally at a point where I don't feel resentful of that, which is great. It means that I'm doing well as a person. So this is another example of like things that you kind of like don't pay attention. They're kind of these hurdles in your life that you have to overcome, and sometimes like you only realize like you've changed when you look back and see like how much better you are right now. And thankfully I have like a lot of those. There's still like a lot of things that I have to improve, but as I talked about before, like if I die today, I would die okay, I would die happy. Even I feel like I would die okay has been kind of reality for the longest time. I would die happy is a somewhat new one, which can be negative, and you can look at it negatively if you think about like, oh, I'm really ready to go now. But if you just think about longevity, it is a good thing that I feel like you should really go to bed like being happy that like if you die, that you'll be happy with the life you had. And the sentiment is kind of like, because sometimes like you're gonna die happy because you're glad it's all over, but like, no, I'm dying happy because I'm happy with like what I was able to see and do, and I think this past year has really improved that in a way or another, because as I said, starting in November, my birthday is the 21st, but starting like in the beginning of November, I was very down, like I was very ready to go, so I started to allow myself some little pleasures, and like they were food. So like I started to allow myself to eat things, and that's been the reality so far until now. Although I'm starting to see like a decrease. I don't know if it's because I'm stable, because when I'm depressed and when I'm manic, I usually eat too much, or maybe not too much, but I eat a lot. So like when I'm stable, I'm kind of okay. But I've been observing that, for example, this past week I haven't been like as obsessed with food as I have once been. So maybe I'm reaching some type of equilibrium, some balance. I was here depriving myself of things. Now I just gave myself too much, and now I'm like at the right at the right spot. I don't know. So either that, or I am stable, and when I'm stable, I don't really. I still eat things. I have my swallow things that I like to eat. Also like something different. Say like I'm not only hungry for sweets, because when I'm here and here, it's just like sweet blend. And like I've been this morning I was craving something salty, and it's been happening this past week as well. Like every once in a while I'll be like look at my little drawer of my treats, and I'm like it's only sweets here. I want something salty. So that's growth maybe or not. It's just a phase. Regardless of what it is different, and it does feel like progress. But yeah, so I guess the conclusion I'm coming to is that this past year of me like maybe sometimes overindulging myself has been really good for my not only my mental health but for my overall experience in life. You know, as I said, if I die today, I'm okay. You know, I'm happy. You know, I had a good run, and you know, maybe my life didn't amount as much as I wanted when I was 16, but I'm happy, you know, and I was not happy when I was 16 or 17 or 18 or 19 or 20, even 21. 21 is when I started, you know, 22 actually, when I started, you know, doing it. Okay, so 2019 is the year where I guess I started focusing more on my happiness and my fulfillment, and realizing that what I had in mind for myself wasn't really going to achieve either. I was just going to add a lot of like demands to my life, like and those demands in themselves were supposed to be fulfilling, but they were not, because there were so many unaddressed issues that I had to address. Yeah. Anyways, changing the topic, just concluding the whole game thing. So I was looking as I was watching the game. The game is probably over by now, but I was just, you know, thinking about like, you know, how things are, you know, where I was at last year, and I was not well, you know, as I said. This was like a little before, you know, the Olympic Games started, and I was in the psych ward. I left by the time of the first half of the first week, the second half of the first week. So I was not doing well, and I also like didn't really pay attention to the games because I wasn't doing well. So it feels like I was in one extreme and now I'm like in another extreme. So like very interesting sequence of events. And the year before that, I was definitely just like all in watching it. And there's no right or wrong way. Like I don't think that, you know, looking forward to something that's going to happen every year is bad, and finding entertainment in that is also like not bad, regardless of what it is. You know, sometimes I look at things and they do feel a little pointless. I'm a little like, what, you know, like I'm not ever judging anybody, because like I'm also sometimes entertained by like the dumbest fucking shit. But it's just that sometimes like I look at things and like, you are really eager for this, but like why? You know, and it can be something like, you know, a game, or I mean, sports is like a big one, because I also like to watch sports. Like I am not different than, you know, the overall majority of people on this planet, but sometimes I'm just not on it, and I think this is one of those times. But for example, like my cousin that I mentioned that we've been getting closer, I have basically you know, like she is, because I no longer show social media and my life has been great since I stopped. Well, she is, and like nothing wrong with that, but she spent like so much time on that, and not only that, but like messaging people, and I'm like, wow, that is very overwhelming to me. Like if I had to respond to every message, I would not be able to do that. I'm glad that, you know, the friends I have, like they are okay with me only responding sparsely, and sometimes they also respond sparsely, so like we're all good. I think that is important. Like we, you know, you don't see somebody for months, but when you do see each other, it's like no time has passed. It's kind of like what I need, and it's also something that I have kind of found. So, you know, we're good there. I didn't expect to, and I wasn't looking for it. I would say the first friend I did actually reach out to her. This is back in 2019, as I said, when I started looking out for my happiness and figuring out like who I was, and finally, because people have been telling me that I had to socialize since I stopped socializing back when I was 13 and I had a traumatic situation happen to me. And I was like, nope. And then that happened, and then I was like, no, I enjoy this. You know, we are the same vibe. You know, we are just great. Like I like her. My parents like her. That is also interesting and important. You know, because they have to, if they they worry about my well-being, and if I'm going through something, if they're gonna let me spend time with somebody, it has to be someone they trust, and they trust her. So, pretty fun. Anyways, the thing about the game, as I said, or it can be like social media, it can be a band, a group, it can be a TV show, it can be a fandom of any sort. We all have our little things that we enjoy, and I'm glad that we all have them, because like if you don't, of course, like when you think about it, this is are pointless, because like why are existing? Like I want to exist for the thing that I enjoy, but like we all have to fucking work and all that, and that's the reality we're inserted in. Maybe 200 years from now, it's going to be different. People are going to be happier and more fulfilled. But we do have examples of people living very fulfilling lives, and still it is what it is. Like they end it, and I relate to that. I totally understand, because that's pretty much what I learned. Because for the longest time, when I was a teenager, I was very much like, I am going to achieve these things, I'm going to do these things, and then I'm going to be happy and contented and fulfilled. And that is not going to happen, because because like when you achieve something, you accomplish something, like you have the high, but then it dies down, and you have to be happy with yourself, and have to overcome your trauma. Like if you don't overcome your trauma, like it doesn't matter how good you are, it's never going to be truly good. So there's that. But anyways, I basically so 2019, I was 21. I turned 22 at the end of the year, and honestly, communication is very important. I remember it's something that happened in my 22nd birthday, which I went out with my parents and my brother to my favorite restaurant. And I remember saying something, and then my mother had a response that was not ideal, but she has since since talked about it. She's retracted, she's apologized, and all that. And the thing, but important, what I'm trying to bring attention to is the fact that like she now knows that, because she studied, she learned, and we talked about it. So communications are important, and it's that thing, because the whole thing of like me being very blunt about things, like there were some things I was not really blunt about, at least not with my parents for a very long time. So it was a whole journey of me becoming like me sharing things with them, and just stalking and all of that. And it is important. So I was very blunt as I was a kid, but then I had this life happen, and also I became a teenager, and there was a trauma and all of that happened, and I think things changed for me. And if like I look at this, I try not to look solely at the trauma, because if I was changed entirely because of that trauma, it's just like it is so grand and important and overwhelming, right? And I still hate it. I can talk about it right now. I can talk about the things that happened in details, and I don't cry anymore. So like that is growth. That is important. I feel, that means that I'm like healing, right? But also like depends if I'm emotionally fragile at that day. Like I might not really been able to talk about it coherently. Not coherently, but like I'll talk about it, but like I'll probably tear up. But the point is that it kind of sucks if like that is, because I hate for this one situation to ruin my life. I mean, right now I can say that it hasn't ruined my life, because I have since been able to work on the trauma, overcome it, and as I said, this past year, it has nothing to do with that. Like so many years I could trace all like the insecurities I had, all the fears, all the anxieties, all like the anger that came from like that situation. That situation sprouted 1,000 legs, and all of them like they led back it all went back to that. So for so many years I could see like the hands crawling. I mean, I couldn't see it, I can see now in retrospect, but like for the past year it was nothing like that.